turning this off. Turning this off. We had a kind of an issue, but we never, so they should be able to hear now.
It'll take about 2 minutes for me to tell you.
Oh, all right, we're gonna wait just another minute or two.
So keep talking.
There's 13 people watching. Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Amazing. Our parish, we're gonna become YouTube sensations. And there's people that make a living just making YouTube videos. Wow, can I do that? No, I'm not, because we're not allowed to have other jobs. When you're a priest, you can't have a second job. It's working now? Yes. Okay. All right. Excellent. Okay, welcome everybody to Life Night number, I've lost count. We've done this so many times. But we have some new faces tonight. I want to welcome you to St. Francis Xavier, to Edge and Life Team. It's a great gift that you're here. I know a lot of people are staying home. A lot of people are not able to come. We've got some people who have quarantined. Raise your hand if you've quarantined, ever. Yeah, it's a lot of us, okay. It's the way that goes. Okay, so over the course of the last several months, we started this in September, all through September, October, we're now into November. We've covered a lot of different topics. If you remember way back, on my first topic, the very first night, we talked about atheism. We talked about belief in God. Should we believe in God? The answer is yes. What do we do with, maybe we have a friend or a family member who doesn't believe in God? How do we speak to them? We've covered a lot of different subjects. Father Robert, the next week, I'm not going to go over all 12 weeks. Father Robert, the next week, did a talk on human suffering. Why is there suffering in the world? How do we understand that as a Catholic church? And then we've gone into lots of different topics along the way. Well, tonight, I just want to give kind of a brief overview. There's so much more that could be said on this topic. I could talk about this topic for hours. If you ever want to talk to me 4 hours, let's do it. But I want to talk to you tonight about the dignity of the human person. The dignity. What does dignity mean? Dignity is a word that basically means that a person has value, that something has worth. And what the Catholic Church proclaims, and what we read in the Bible, what we see in the teachings of the Church, is that every human person has dignity. If you can think of a human person, they have dignity. Even people we don't like, even people we disagree with, even people who are different from us, people who are bigger or smaller, people who look different, whatever it may be, speak a different language, are from another country. Every human person has dignity. That's the main message that I want to get across today. Because this has serious implications to how we live our lives. If every human person has dignity, then it's going to change the way we treat each other. Just a simple example. Let's take bullying at school. You all have seen it. Maybe it's happened to you. Maybe you've done it to somebody else. Bullying means one person thinks less of another person and treats them poorly. Pushes them up against the locker, makes fun of them behind their back or in front of their face. But if we believe that every human person has dignity, there would be, if we really lived that out, none of us would ever participate in bullying. So it has real consequences to how you and I live our lives. In our families, in our schools, in our parishes, but also in the larger world, even in our politics. And so you're going to hear some terms tonight that are kind of have been sort of politically charged. You hear them much more when presidential candidates talk than maybe we talk about at church. But we're going to try to bring it home so it's going to have some real life consequences for you and me as we go out into the world this week. Okay, so this is a beautiful picture here. This is Mother Teresa, after whom our chapel is named. And she's holding a little boy from India. And just holding him, looking at him, and smiling. And Mother Teresa is one of those great examples for us of someone who really believed that every human life had dignity. All right? So let's see who else has dignity. Let's look at some different kinds of human beings. Now, we look at that little baby and say, of course, that is the cutest baby I've ever seen. Maybe not the cutest, but that's a pretty darn cute baby. You were probably cuter when you were a baby. Right? But we would look at that baby and we would say, of course, that is a human being worth the protection of the law, worth fighting for, worth loving. All right? So we look at that little cute, chubby baby and say, wow, that's a human being worth protecting. All right? How about this? Right? So often in our culture today, especially older people, are way too often cast aside. One of the very interesting things, and I think one of the very tragic things about this whole COVID-19 is the number of elderly people who have died. It's happened right here in our parish. It's maybe happened in some of your families. Right? They are a vulnerable population. When you get older, what happens, right? You get a little weaker. You need a little more help. You need a little more health care. Right? But we would look at this woman, I don't know her, we just took this off the internet. I Googled old lady. Boom! Alright? This woman right here, she has a story. She has a family. She has dignity. Not because of anything she does, but just because of who she is. All right, so which one has more dignity? Cute, chubby baby, or old lady? Which one? Who's better? Who's more important? We would say neither. They're equal. All right? Now, that's pretty easy. That's pretty easy. Cute baby, cute old lady. All right? When we talk about that every human person has dignity, that every human person is created in the image and likeness of God. Easy. Easy. Not as easy. Right? We could look at these gentlemen here. Again, I don't know them. But they're obviously in prison. They're all tatted up. They're in prison for a reason. We could say, these guys are less important than her. Or than her. But to God, and in the great teachings of our church, chubby baby equal to old lady equal to these guys in prison. Right? These men, they have families. They have a story to tell. Now, I don't know, but they're in jail probably for a reason, right? They've committed some crime, maybe even a horrible crime. But in the eyes of God, they are His beloved sons. This is an image of people trying to cross underneath a barbed wire fence. I don't know where this was taken, but it seems to be taken at some kind of border crossing. They're in one country and they want to be in a different country. And so they enter into it. Now, we can have all kinds of political debates about these guys and what they deserve. Do they deserve to be in prison for the rest of their life? Maybe they do, and that's a separate debate. But what's not up for debate is, do these guys have dignity? Are these guys created in the image and likeness of God? Yes. How about people trying to move from one country to another? Now, we could look at this and say, well, they're breaking the law. Okay, again, that's a political argument that we can have. What ought to be proper immigration laws for one country or another? That's a perfectly legitimate debate. But what's not up for debate is, do these people have value? Are these people created in the image and likeness of God? Just like these guys, just like her, and just like her. Okay? Again, I don't know the story behind this. What we do know, this gentleman here, he's at some kind of pride parade, some kind of protest, some kind of march. Again, we can have a debate about what ought to be the laws in a particular country around the subject of marriage. Who can marry who? Who can have kids? Who can adopt? All those are important political debates and arguments, and we have those all the time in our country. But what's not up for debate is that this gentleman here has dignity. That this gentleman here is created in the image and likeness of God. Equal to them, equal to them, equal to her, equal to her. Okay? This is an image of a little baby inside his mother's womb. I don't know if you've ever studied or if you've taken biology or embryology, but it's fascinating to know how a baby grows. Every single one of us began as basically kind of a single or double, two-cell organism, right? You and I used to be microscopic. And now look at you. You are definitely not microscopic. I can see you without the use of a microscope. At what point did you get dignity? At what point did you become a human being? And the answer is, the moment that you were conceived. When sperm met egg, and you came into being, even microscopic you had dignity. You had rights. You became you. I had somebody say to me once, really the only difference between you as a microscopic person and you now is the addition of food and water. So, in our tradition, we hold strongly that even an unborn child, microscopic or a little bit bigger, that they have value, they have dignity. Right? It's one of the reasons why we speak up so much against the subject of abortion, which we'll get to here in just a minute. All right? So, unborn child, equal to this gentleman, equal to, equal to, equal to, equal to. Sometimes we run into people that maybe we don't understand. And there's a tendency, you could look at this and say, what is going on there? Imagine if these girls here showed up at your school. Right? There would be maybe an immediate kind of, maybe curiosity, and that's okay. But there also might be kind of an immediate suspicion. Who are you? Why do you dress like that? Why you got those things in your nose like that? But are these girls human beings? Yes. They have dignity. These young women are created in the image and likeness of God. Equal to, equal to, equal to, equal to, equal to, equal to. Created in the image and likeness of God. I don't know who this is. You get a picture off the internet. But oftentimes, when somebody gets to the end of their life, when they are very, very ill, maybe from an accident, maybe from some illness, very, very often, we treat people like this as less than human. There's a practice called euthanasia that we'll get to here in just a minute. And as Catholics, we oppose euthanasia as much as we oppose abortion. Because what it does is it takes a vulnerable human and you do something to actively kill them. Now, we're all going to die. Our day is coming at some point. We pray that the Lord will give us many, many years. But we want to allow death to happen naturally. And so euthanasia, though, is the active killing of somebody for whatever reason. All right? These are refugees on kind of a makeshift boat coming from one country into another. Human beings trying to find a better life. Now, again, we can have a political argument over the best way for them to do this. But are these people human? No question about it. How about this young man? You can see by the way he looks that this young man has Down syndrome. Right? Many of you go to school with some students with some special needs, maybe Down syndrome. We have parishioners right here in our own parish. We just had one born this summer, a little girl with Down syndrome. What happens so often in our culture today, when a woman gets pregnant and goes in to have some tests, and really just to see kind of is the baby healthy, many, many times there will be some kind of preliminary indications that there might be something a little abnormal with the baby. Oftentimes they can see inside the mother's womb and they can see what's going on. In 80 to 90% of prenatal, kind of before they're born, Down syndrome diagnoses, the family chooses abortion. They want to have a child that they think is kind of perfect. They don't want to have to deal with this. 80 to 90%. Right? That's an incredible tragedy. That people like this are being killed before they ever even have a chance to be born. Right? As a church, we would say, no. This young man, from the moment that he was conceived, has inherent dignity and value. If you can't see, this is just a homeless gentleman. He's got all his possessions, boxes, garbage bags, a couple shopping carts. Right? We could see this man and we could say, get a job. What's wrong with you? Right? But we should also look at this man and we could say, this man has dignity. This man has value. This man was created in the image and likeness of God. He has a story to tell. He has a family. Oftentimes what we see in the homeless population, whether in Stillwater or anywhere, there's always a story behind it. Nobody, as a kid, says, when I grow up, I'm going to be homeless. But it happens in a variety of circumstances. Life happens. Sometimes mental illness happens. Sometimes it's economic situations. But does that ever change the dignity of a human person? And the answer is, it doesn't. All right. For all those pictures, it comes down to this. Every human being is created in the image of God. We see it in the earliest chapters of the book of Genesis. That God created us, male and female, He created us in His image. And that gives us dignity, that gives us value. All human life must be respected, and this is a great way to say it, from conception to natural death. So oftentimes at Mass we might pray that all human life will be protected from conception to natural death. What we mean is from the moment you were conceived to the moment you die, the dignity that belongs to you as a human person. All right, now where does this all come from? When you look in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, the teachings of our church, it all comes under the fifth commandment. You can read the commandments in Exodus chapter 20. And what you'll see, the fifth commandment says, "You shall not kill." Now, I mean, most of us would say, okay, that's probably like one of the easiest commandments to follow. Okay, don't kill me. Okay, got it. But there are so many ways in which we degrade other human beings when we think of other people as less than us. And that's not okay. So what does this mean for us? So we go to the Catechism of the Catholic Church. This is paragraph 2258. I'm just going to step down and read this because you may not be able to see it. And it says this: human life is sacred because from its beginning it involves the creative action of God. You guys ever think about that? That you exist because of God's creative action. Isn't that amazing? Do you ever think about that? But you know what? Who else exists because of God's creative action? Your worst enemy. The person you hate the most. The person who drives you crazy. They were also created by God's creative action. And it remains forever in a special relationship with the Creator who is its sole end. God alone is the Lord of life from its beginning until its end. No one can, under any circumstance, claim for himself the right directly to destroy an innocent human being. Right? So it's not ours. It's not our decision to make when we live and when we die. Or for another person, when they live and when they die. It's God's decision to make. All right, so we're going to have to cover three quick topics: abortion, euthanasia, and the death penalty. All right, now again, these are kind of politically charged, but I want you to understand them in the religious sense. All right, so paragraph 2270 of the Catechism of the Catholic Church says this: human life must be respected and protected absolutely from the moment of conception. From the first moment of his existence, a human being must be recognized as having the rights of a person, among which is the inviolable right of every innocent being to life. So anything that messes with life in utero, which would be abortion, which is the purposeful taking of a human life before they're born, we would oppose. Not because we're mean, not because we're trying to mess with people's lives, but because we're trying to not mess with people's lives. Because we're trying to protect the dignity of every human life from conception to natural death. All right, so that's just kind of abortion in a nutshell. Euthanasia. Euthanasia is not as big a topic in today's world, but it's growing and growing and growing. Paragraph 2276. Those whose lives are diminished or weakened deserve special respect. Sick or handicapped persons should be helped to lead lives as normal as possible. But what happens in our culture today, Pope Francis calls it, he says, we live in a throwaway culture. And we kind of do. I do this and you do this, right? You have a cup and you use it and then you throw it away. All right? We would say, okay, no big deal. But we kind of also do that with people. When somebody becomes not useful, when somebody ceases to be helpful and maybe even becomes a burden, we say, let's just put them away. They're not helpful anymore. They don't have the worth that they used to have. And so let's get rid of them. And so what's happening in a lot of different countries, and even states right here in the United States, euthanasia is legal. Somebody is old, or somebody is handicapped, or somebody is very ill, and the family can say, we would like you to give them a certain amount of drugs that will bring about their death. All right, now we oppose that. Because that person, even though they're sick, even though they're old, even though they might have a handicap, they have inherent dignity and value. 2277, whatever its motives and means, direct euthanasia consists in putting an end to the lives of the handicapped, sick, or dying persons. You're not going to see it more plainly than this. It is morally unacceptable. So as we make those decisions about people in our own lives, or as we go out and vote, or as we go out and try to change the world to be better, we have to keep this in mind, that every human person has value. All right, I'm going to skip this out, and I'm going to skip that one. And we're going to come to this final topic. And this topic is a little bit different than abortion and euthanasia, because when we get to the death penalty is anyone, you've committed a serious crime. Take the crime of murder, for example. Someone who has murdered another person. Very often, in the state of Oklahoma and a lot of places, they would be given a death sentence. They would be sentenced to death. Which means that the state of Oklahoma, at a certain day, at a certain time, is going to kill them. Now, it's different from abortion and euthanasia, because now we're not talking here about innocent human life. We're talking about somebody who's killed somebody else. Now, side note is sometimes there are people who are in prison. Sometimes there's people even on death row who did not commit the crimes that they were convicted of. Innocent people have been let out of prison. Innocent people have been even taken off death row. It's been found that innocent people have even been executed. So, innocent life is still possible here, but in most of the death penalty cases, we're talking about somebody who did something really, really horrible and horrible. Does that person have dignity? And the Catholic Church says yes. Recourse to the death penalty on the part of legitimate authority, that's the government, following a fair trial, was long considered an appropriate response to the gravity of certain crimes, and an acceptable, albeit extreme, means of safeguarding the common good. Today, however, there is an increasing awareness that the dignity of the person is not lost, even after the commission of very serious crimes. In addition, a new understanding has emerged of the significance of penal sanctions imposed by the state. Lastly, more effective systems of detention have been developed, which ensure the due protection of citizens, but at the same time do not definitively deprive the guilty of the possibility of redemption. So even someone who's done something horrible has dignity. Now, I don't know about you, but that makes me feel better. I've never killed anybody, but I've sinned, and so have you. Where do we draw the line of somebody who is unredeemable and somebody who is? So the church stands controversially. A lot of people see this and they say, oh, so you care more about criminals than you do about victims? We would say no. They all have dignity. They all have value. So we have abortion, we have euthanasia, and we have the death penalty. Again, there's a lot more that can be said and a lot more that has been written. But this is the last piece here. Consequently, the church teaches in light of the gospel that the death penalty is inadmissible because it is an attack on the inviolability and dignity of the person, and she works with determination for its abolition worldwide. In other words, the Catholic Church, going forward, we want to abolish the death penalty. We want no more abortion, no more euthanasia, no more death penalty. Okay? Easier said than done. It's going to be a very difficult task. All right, the last thing I want to give to you guys, you all are young people. You have maybe some friends in your school, in your families. Maybe there's a young woman, a young man in your life who has become pregnant. Or you will know someone in the future who is pregnant and maybe they don't want to be. Or they didn't plan it. Right here in Stillwater, I just want you to be aware, there's a wonderful organization called Birthright of Stillwater. Birthright is a national organization that has offices all over the country. We have one right here in Stillwater. And what Birthright does, and it's actually mostly run by people from our parish, what Birthright does is they help women in crisis pregnancy to bring the baby to term. They help with clothes, they help with food, they help with getting medical care, but they can also help connect a young woman maybe to a family that might want to adopt that particular child. No child is unwanted. No child is unwanted. So this is just one local resource. Your other resources are your parents, me, Father Robert, Ashley, your small group leader. Right? You have a lot of resources available to you should you or somebody you know get into a situation where there's pregnancy and it's unexpected or is unwanted. Right? We will help you. We will help them. All right. Here we go. Dignity created by God. Created by God. Created by God. Created by God. Created in the image and likeness of God. Ashley's going to break it up. Appreciate everybody listening. If you got questions, I'm going to stick around a little bit. You good?
All right, can you all hear me? I'm not going to use the mic, but there's kind of a small group of us tonight, so we're just going to break up. Girls in the youth center, we're going to spread out in there. And the guys are all going to go into the parish hall together and just spread out. So there's chairs already set up in there. Just move those around. Just make sure you are staying 6 feet apart and keep your mask on. Will that work?
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Ready, break. All right. Thanks for joining us, everybody, on the live stream. All right. Have a great night.